Hey everyone, welcome to Anime Dreams. Today, we're diving into another exciting fanfic discussion. What if Naruko became the ultimate vigilante? Part 3. Disclaimer: this channel is dedicated to entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in my videos. Full credit goes to the rightful creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump right in. It was July 9th, and Naruko found herself in Gotham City. She had come in search of Jason Blood, a renowned expert in demonology and the occult, perhaps the most knowledgeable in the field. Naruko could only hope he was the right person to provide the answers she desperately needed. If she was going to understand Kurama's condition, she couldn't do it alone. After the Cadmus incident, the younger heroes were determined to form their own team and operate independently in some capacity. The Justice League eventually agreed, leading to the creation of a new covert team based in Mount Justice. While this new responsibility came with certain restrictions, they were somewhat eased by the introduction of a new ally, Nganmers, the niece of Martian Manhunter. It was a positive development overall, but Naruko's mind was preoccupied with something else: Superman's distant behavior toward Superboy. Superboy had found true friends among his rescuers from Cadmus, but when it came to the hero he was genetically linked to, he faced nothing but cold indifference. It was an unfortunate situation. Naruko didn't want to interfere, but she had a feeling that sooner or later, she would have to confront Superman about his actions. A new challenge. Shinobi was at a crossroads. Reaching Gotham City had been easy enough. An atlas had guided him from Metropolis, situated on the west side of the Hudson River, north of New York City, to Gotham, located in southern New Jersey along the shores of Delaware Bay. Traveling at an impressive speed of 70 to 80 miles per hour along major roads helped him stay on course, though he still managed to miss a few exits along the way. By the time he arrived, the sun was nearing the horizon, and he had no idea where to begin looking for Jason Blood. The man's address wasn't publicly listed, and randomly questioning people on the street wouldn't be productive. Besides, Naruko wanted to keep her visit as discreet as possible. If Batman discovered she had left Metropolis and traveled all the way to Gotham for an unknown reason, there would undoubtedly be many questions. Now, hours after her arrival, Naruko sat atop a high-rise building, mask pulled down as she enjoyed a cup of instant noodles. The sun had set nearly an hour ago, and she was beginning to regret not doing more thorough research before embarking on this journey. She had brought her atlas, but without a proper point of reference, it was practically useless. She was quickly running out of ideas. Finding Jason Blood in a city this large seemed nearly impossible. Just then, an explosion erupted several streets away. It was the opportunity she needed. Batman would undoubtedly respond to the situation, likely bringing Robin along. If Naruko could locate Robin without alerting Batman, she might be able to persuade him to help track down Jason Blood. Acting quickly, she discarded the empty noodle cup and tore the Gotham page from her atlas, folding it neatly before tucking it into her pouch. She would likely need it before the night was over. Pulling her mask back into place, she took a running start and leapt off the rooftop, heading straight toward the source of the explosion. Despite being close to the explosion, it appeared that Batman and Robin arrived at the scene simultaneously with Shinobi. The blast had occurred at the Gotham Museum of Antiquities. Standing atop a nearby rooftop, Shinobi observed as Batman exchanged a few words with Robin before slipping into the smoke-filled building through one of the shattered windows. While there were no raging flames, the lingering smoke seemed to be a result of the initial detonation. Robin swiftly aimed his grappling hook upward and ascended to the museum's rooftop. It seemed Shinobi wouldn't even need to go out of his way to separate them. Regardless, this was the perfect opportunity. With effortless agility, Shinobi leapt across the wide street, landing silently behind Robin, who was crouched over an open metal box. A thin cable extended from his glove into the device, suggesting he was in the middle of hacking into the museum systems. Whatever his purpose, it was of little concern to Shinobi. This was Batman's operation. Shinobi only needed a bit of information before moving on. He lightly tapped Robin's shoulder, and the reaction was immediate. Robin flinched and whirled around, an explosive disc already in hand, prepared to defend against an unexpected threat. What in the world? Shinobi, what are you doing here? How did you sneak up on me? I'm a ninja? Remember? Shinobi responded in a calm, matter-of-fact tone. But that's not important right now. I need a favor, and Batman or the League can't find out. It was a lot to ask, considering Robin's loyalty to his mentor, but the lingering awkwardness from Speedy's outburst at the Hall of Justice still hadn't faded. Shinobi hoped that would be enough to convince Robin to help. Robin glanced at the holographic interface hovering above his glove, smoothly securing an explosive disc back into one of his many pouches. Yeah, well, I'm a little busy at the moment, if you hadn't noticed. And asking me to go behind Batman's back? That's not a small favor. Come on, what's a favor or two between friends? I'll owe you one. Shinobi's urgency was clear. If Robin refused, she would have to find someone else, and in a city like Gotham, her options were limited. She unfolded a map and held it out. Look, I just need you to point me in the right direction. That's simple enough, right? Robin studied her for a moment before sighing. All right, but you owe me big time. Where are you trying to go? I need to find someone named Jason Blood. He's supposed to be an expert on demons, and he lives here in Gotham. Robin paused, narrowing his eyes slightly before turning away from his glove's interface. Why do you need a demonologist? And why can't the League know? It's personal, all right. They don't need to be involved in everything I do. Naruko crossed her arms. Besides, I've been considered an adult since I was 13. I've handled myself just fine for years, and I don't need them monitoring my every move. It was true, back in her village, becoming a shinobi marked the transition into adulthood. By the time she had arrived in this reality, she was already 18, the recognized age of adulthood here. The Justice League technically had no authority to stop her, but avoiding unnecessary questions was the best course of action. Robin considered her words before finally nodding. Fair enough. But Jason Blood doesn't actually live in Gotham. He has a large house just outside the city limits. He pointed to a spot on the edge of the map, and Naruko made a mental note. Remember, you owe me for this. And I will collect on that favor someday. Got it. Thanks, Robin, I really appreciate it. Naruko offered a grateful nod before turning to leave. Using the museum as a landmark, she quickly oriented herself and spoke over her shoulder. Whatever you need, you can count on me. With her destination set, she leapt onto the adjacent building, effortlessly scaling its side before vanishing over the rooftop. Robin, now undistracted, turned back to his task. His hacking attempt on the museum's security system had finished processing, and a live feed of the museum's cameras appeared in his holographic interface. He rewound the footage to just before the explosion and examined the screen closely. A teenage boy dressed in a sleek black suit and tie stood within the frame. His dark hair was styled with two distinctive spikes on either side, resembling devil horns. The boy moved through the museum with a casual air, seemingly unbothered by his surroundings. Moments later, a small cat with ginger fur and tiger-like stripes trotted into view, carrying a long black staff in its mouth. The boy took the staff from the cat, inspecting it carefully before nodding as if confirming he had what he needed. Then, a swirling mass of ominous red energy formed in his hand. He left it floating in the air, where it pulsed with an unsettling glow. The boy gathered up the cat and turned to face the camera with a smirk. Then, as if dissolving into thin air, both he and the cat disintegrated into ash, vanishing without a trace. A second later, the red energy sphere detonated in a dramatic explosion, cutting the security feed to static. Robin rewound the footage, freezing the frame on the boy's smirking face. A quick scan through Batman's database of known criminals yielded an instant match. Clarion the Witch Boy. Jason Blood resided in what Robin had described as a grand house. However, grand might not have been an adequate enough term. It was a sprawling Victorian mansion, painted in a warm mocha hue, with dark roof tiles adding to its classic charm. The structure stood tall, reaching 3 stories at its highest point, and was adorned with elegant windows, the lower ones secured by intricate wrought iron grates, likely in place as a precaution against intruders. The mansion was surrounded by a well-maintained lawn, its neatly trimmed grass stretching out until it met a border of towering coniferous trees, signaling the start of a vast, untouched forest. Unlike many grand estates, there were no fences or gates, only a quiet dirt road that led directly to the house's front steps. A separate path branched off toward a garage that stood apart from the main building. Naruko approached the house openly, walking along the dirt path as any visitor might. There was no need for secrecy, after all, she wasn't there to cause trouble. Sneaking in would only raise unnecessary suspicion. If she wanted answers, a direct and courteous approach would be the best course of action. The ninja ascended the front steps and rang the doorbell. She hadn't considered the late hour or the fact that she was arriving unannounced at a secluded home, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. She stood for a moment, shifting restlessly from one foot to the other, until the sound of movement behind the door caught her attention. A rustling noise was quickly followed by a loud crash and some muffled grumbling before the familiar click of locks being undone reached her ears. The door opened, revealing Jason Blood. He was a tall Caucasian man, standing just a little over 6 feet, with a sturdy build reminiscent of an athlete. Despite the hour, it seemed he hadn't been asleep. He was dressed in khaki slacks, a white Oxford shirt with the sleeves casually rolled up, and a black leather belt pulling the look together. When he spoke, it was with a distinct English accent. "Naruko, the self-proclaimed ninja from Metropolis. Does Superman know you're here?" "No, and I need it to stay that way. This is personal." Jason raised an eyebrow. "And what, exactly, do we have to discuss? Personal or otherwise?" "Demons, Mr. Blood. I need to understand why a powerful demon would suddenly become unresponsive. Almost as if they've completely shut down, no reaction to anything, just catatonic." Jason hummed and thought before replying. "That could happen for several reasons. I'd need more details about the circumstances leading up to this state to form a proper theory. Could you take me to this demon? If it's all the same to you, I'd rather describe what happened than reveal their identity. And I can't let you see them. They're my friend, my partner. I need to be certain they're safe. You seem trustworthy, but I can't take that risk." Jason studied her for a moment before nodding. "Fair enough. You'd better come in. If I'm going to help, I'll need to consult my books, and you have quite the story to tell." A short while later. That narrows things down quite a bit," Jason mused, standing from his chair and heading toward a towering bookshelf in his library. The two had relocated to the library about 15 minutes earlier, where Naruko recounted her and Kurama's journey across realities, and how it had left the demon in his current unresponsive state. The library itself was a grand room with shelves lining every wall, each packed with leather-bound tomes, fragile manuscripts, which had their own dedicated shelf, and more conventional hardcovers. A fireplace sat unlit on the far wall, in front of which were 2 comfortable chairs with a small table between them. Jason skimmed the shelves, selecting a thick tome and flipping to a marked page. Turning back to Naruko, he read aloud, "On the subject of dimensional travel, when passage between universes is forced, it is entirely possible for a demon's soul to become trapped in the in-between space." Naruko's eyes narrowed. "What's the in-between space? And how do I get him out?" This was it. After nearly a year, she was finally on the verge of answers. She could finally help Kurama. Jason shut the book with a decisive snap. "Simply put, the in-between space is a plane of existence that runs through all realities, what some call the multiverse. Sorcerers refer to it as the astral plane, while demons call it limbo. The problem is that if someone enters by accident, escaping is nearly impossible." Naruko felt her heart sink. Jason, noticing her reaction, quickly added, "I said nearly impossible. If you have access to his anchor in this reality, his body, it becomes significantly easier to bring him back. All we need to do is..." Before he could finish, the entire room shook as something massive crashed through the outside wall. Books, wood, and dust flew in all directions as a huge, ginger-furred saber-toothed cat with tiger-like stripes landed in the wreckage. The beast surveyed the room, its sharp eyes locking onto Jason before it lunged. It would have hit its mark, had it not been intercepted mid-air by a very determined Naruko. She tackled the creature with full force, sending them both crashing through the damaged wall and tumbling onto the lawn outside. Naruko was the first to recover, springing to her feet in an instant. "Hey! We were having a conversation," she called out, clearly unimpressed. The saber-tooth growled, its muscles tensing as it prepared to pounce again. But before it could react, Naruko vanished in a blur. A split second later, she reappeared above the beast, her leg raised high over her head in preparation for a powerful strike. "All right, kitty," she smirked. "Looks like you wanna play. So let's play." Her kick came down like a thunderbolt, and the saber-tooth's world erupted into a whirlwind of swift, precise blows. A whole lot of them. And not a single one felt pleasant. Jason walked over to inspect the second hole that had appeared in his wall within mere minutes. While it was certainly an inconvenience, repairs were not a problem for him. What truly concerned him were his collection of rare and irreplaceable books. He was about to check on his guest and the unexpected intruder when a voice called out from behind him. "Little Jason Blood. I don't see what all the fuss was about. Vandal made you out to be some mighty demon, but all I see is just an ordinary human." Turning around, Jason saw Clarion the Witch Boy standing amidst his treasured library. Before Jason could come up with a response, Clarion casually gathered a small orb of red energy at his fingertip, then flicked his thumb as if pulling the trigger of a firearm, sending the energy straight at him. Reacting quickly, Jason dived aside, landing behind one of the chairs for cover. "Jason! Come on out. I was promised strength. Show me what you've got," Clarion called out in a sing-song tone. His form flickered for a moment, becoming briefly transparent. He needed to wrap this up quickly. Tikal, his loyal familiar, was engaged in a fierce struggle, and Clarion didn't have time for distractions. Vandal Savage had assured him that Jason Blood held great power, he just had to draw it out. Well, if Clarion wanted a surprise, he was about to get one. Gone. Gone, the form of man. Rise, the demon, Etrigan. A flash of infernal fire erupted, accompanied by a deep, guttural roar. The chair Jason had hidden behind was knocked aside as a new figure took his place. Jason Blood had transformed. He now stood shorter in height but broader in build. The entity before Clarion, Etrigan, was heavily muscled, with burnt orange skin, glowing red eyes, and ears that resembled the wings of a bat. He was clad in a tight red outfit with metal cuffs around his wrists, a black belt, and a flowing blue cape. His fierce expression was completed with a sharp-toothed snarl. "Now this is more like it, Jason." Clarion grinned. Finally, he was getting what he came for. Soon, he could wrap this up and deal with the one who had been bothering Tikal. "The man is gone. I am Etrigan, and you will fall before me." With those words, Etrigan launched himself at Clarion with a single, mighty leap. His intent was unmistakable, he was going to overpower the witch boy. However, something was off. Clarion simply smirked. Just as Etrigan lunged forward, Clarion snapped his fingers. A long black brand appeared in his hand, forged from dark iron and covered in ancient runes glowing red with magic. Holding it steady, he let Etrigan do the rest. The moment Etrigan made contact, the brand pressed into his chest, burning into his skin with an intense, supernatural force. The demon fell to the ground, momentarily stunned. A dark, seared mark was now visible on his chest, a circular symbol with a single eye in the center. Clarion admired his work with satisfaction. The Imperium brand. Works just as intended. Now, stand up, Etrigan. It's time for some fun. The demon rose and, after a brief hesitation, knelt before Clarion. "As you command, my master," Etrigan declared. Meanwhile, a skilled ninja was locked in a battle of his own. Frustration fueled each strike as he fought against an incredibly resilient saber-tooth-like beast. He was so close to the answers he had been searching for, and this creature had nearly ruined everything. It wasn't much of a fair fight. The beast's sheer durability was the only thing keeping it on its feet. With a final exertion of force, the ninja sent the creature tumbling away. It landed heavily and remained still, showing no signs of getting back up. Satisfied, he turned his attention back to the library. That beast had targeted Jason, which meant Jason might know what it was. And right now, the ninja needed answers. Tikal. He called out, ready to finish what had been started. The shinobi turned back toward the creature, only to notice a teenager dressed in black with an unusual hairstyle standing beside it, offering words of comfort. "And just who do you think you are, huh?" the shinobi demanded. It was bad enough that this creature had caused trouble, but now someone else had appeared, seemingly connected to it. "Are you looking for a fight too?" The teenager lifted their gaze, eyes filled with determination. "I don't think I'm the one you should be worried about. Etrigan." Before the shinobi could make sense of the words or react, they were suddenly knocked aside by a blur of red and orange. Hitting the ground with a grunt, they looked up to see a powerful figure looming over them, pinning them down. Their opponent raised both fists, ready to strike. But the shinobi wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. With a determined effort, Shinobi's legs swung up behind Etrigan, locking around the demon's neck before forcefully driving him back into the ground. The technique was executed flawlessly, but Shinobi knew Etrigan wouldn't stay down for long. Quickly regaining her footing, she took a few steps back and began forming hand seals. However, before she could complete them, she had to leap away as a blast of red energy struck the spot where she had just been standing. Shinobi narrowed her eyes at Clarion. 2 against 1, huh? Alright, I'll take you both on, and I won't even break a sweat. Clarion looked unimpressed, but before he could scoff, the ninja vanished from sight. In the next moment, Clarion found himself soaring through the air, his chin throbbing from a sudden, powerful uppercut. But Shinobi wasn't finished. Clarion's trajectory suddenly shifted, and he glanced down at his upper arms, spotting nearly invisible wires attached to him. He hadn't even noticed when Shinobi had placed them, and they weren't tied. Some unseen force was holding them in place. With a sharp pull, Shinobi tightened her grip on the wires and spun in a full circle, swinging Clarion through the air. She timed it perfectly. Her plan was to use Clarion as an unwilling projectile against Etrigan, who had already started charging forward. Etrigan braced for impact, but before Clarion could collide with him, the witch boy dissolved into black ashes. Shinobi barely hesitated before refocusing her efforts on the demon. In a burst of speed, she closed the gap and delivered a powerful flying knee to Etrigan's face, sending him crashing onto his back. Without wasting a moment, Shinobi pressed the advantage. She positioned herself over the demon's chest, interlocked her hands, and brought them down in 3 resounding hammer blows to his head. Just as she was about to follow up, another blast of red energy forced her to retreat, though the attack inadvertently struck Etrigan instead. Swiftly forming a hand seal, Shinobi created 4 shadow clones, each of them dashing toward Clarion, who had repositioned himself a short distance away. While the clones kept Clarion occupied, Shinobi turned her attention back to the dazed Etrigan, gripping one of the demon's massive wrists with both hands. Clarion barely managed to dispel the clones before realizing what was happening. His eyes widened in alarm as Shinobi spun and lifted Etrigan off the ground, swinging him overhead like a massive warhammer. The demon crashed down onto a hastily summoned red energy barrier. But Shinobi didn't stop. She continued to use Etrigan as a battering ram, hammering away at Clarion's shield. The force of each impact made Clarion's frustration grow. Finally, with a snarl, glowing runes appeared beneath his feet. As Etrigan was brought down for one final strike, the shield shattered, but with it came a surge of energy beneath Shinobi. Her eyes widened as a red pillar of energy erupted, launching her into the air. Forced to release her grip on Etrigan, she landed swiftly, readying herself for another round. However, it seemed unnecessary. Clarion had retreated, taking Etrigan with him. "You think you're so tough? I'll be back, and next time, you won't be so lucky." Clarion's frustration was evident as he vanished, his voice carrying a hint of childish indignation. Shinobi exhaled, watching them disappear. She knew this wasn't over, but for now, she had won. Luck? I just outmaneuvered all of you across this field. If you think that was just luck, why don't you test that theory against my foot and see if it agrees? In a blur of movement, the shinobi closed the distance between himself and his targets in an instant, but it was already too late. His spinning kick sliced through the air, landing on nothing. Clarion had used his vanishing trick and escaped, taking the demon and the beast with him. The shinobi remained on high alert for a few moments, wary of a potential ambush. When it became clear that Clarion was truly gone, he exhaled sharply in frustration. Figures he was all talk. With a subtle hand seal, 10 identical clones appeared at his side. Find Jason, and do it quickly. Batman will probably show up any minute. The clones gave quick nods before darting off in different directions. The shinobi was about to follow when he sensed 3 familiar presences behind him. You have some explaining to do. He knew that voice anywhere, Batman. Muttering under his breath, he turned to face him. Standing alongside the Dark Knight were Robin and Superman. I know this looks bad, but I stopped the villains. Everything's under control. Jason will clear everything up when he gets here. At that moment, his clones vanished, and the knowledge flooded into him, Jason Blood was nowhere to be found. There was no explanation coming. Oh. This just got complicated. 1 week after the incident in Gotham, Naruko sat in her apartment, carefully reviewing a file Batman had given her. The document detailed the abilities, temperament, and past movements of Clarion the Witch Boy. After Clarion had escaped with Etrigan, the inevitable questions followed, just as Naruko had expected. It was the worst-case scenario, exactly what she had been trying to avoid from the start. However, to her surprise, both Batman and Superman were far more understanding than she had anticipated. If anything, she had braced herself for much more frustration from Batman in particular. Caught in a difficult position, Naruko had decided to reveal part of the truth about her presence in Gotham. She explained that she had come seeking Jason Blood's knowledge of demons. That much was true. However, she had woven a fabricated explanation about investigating whether a demon could help her return to her original world. Lying to those who had welcomed and assisted her so readily left an unpleasant feeling, but she knew she had to be cautious with certain secrets. The fewer people who knew about Kurama, the safer they both would be. There was no telling what kind of chaos could unfold if the wrong individuals discovered Kurama's existence. Dealing with the Akatsuki had been more than enough. She didn't need new threats endangering her friends in pursuit of her partner. Naturally, after understanding the situation, the question of responsibility arose. Batman had explained Jason Blood's unique existence, both man and demon in one being. He also informed Naruko about the Imperius brand, an artifact Clarion had stolen earlier that night. This tool had allowed Clarion to seize control of Jason's demonic side, Etrigan. Batman, despite his famously stern nature, was also fair. After careful deliberation, it was decided that Naruko would be given the opportunity to correct her mistake. She was tasked with tracking down Clarion, ensuring justice was served, and ultimately finding a way to free Etrigan. One challenge was that Clarion had no known hideouts or frequent locations, and he hadn't been spotted since his escape. However, if there was one thing Naruko excelled at, it was being resourceful. She would track him down and get the answers she needed. Her concentration was interrupted by the ringing of her communicator. Quickly, she placed the small device in her ear and pressed the button to answer. Shinobi here. Hey, it's Robin. The team is heading out for a group activity, some bonding time. Catch a teleporter to Star City, and we'll meet you there. Before Naruko could respond, the call ended. She let out a small sigh, stood up, and stretched. Repeatedly going over the same file wasn't getting her anywhere. Maybe a break with her friends was exactly what she needed. Without wasting any more time, she suited up and made her way to the nearest Zeta Beam teleporter. Scene transition. Moving with ease, Shinobi leapt across the rooftops of Suicide Slum, taking a steady and measured pace. The Zeta Beam teleporter was located in the basement of a hotel in New Troy. It did raise the question of why the League would place such an important mode of transportation in a public building, but if Batman had approved the location, there had to be a good reason. The League trusted his judgment, and that was enough for her. The shinobi arrived at the bridge spanning Hobbs River, a pathway leading north into New Troy. With a swift movement, she leapt onto the suspension cables and dashed across with practiced ease. Her body moved instinctively, allowing her mind to focus on more pressing matters, finding Clarion. The world was vast, and tracking down a sorcerer who preferred to remain hidden would be no simple task. She had already faced difficulties locating Jason Blood within a single city. Searching for Clarion across an entire world would be an even greater challenge. Reaching the highest point of the bridge's first tower, she paused, taking in the breathtaking view. From above, the city appeared mesmerizing, a dazzling expanse of lights and shadows. Gone were the signs of wear and neglect that lined the streets below. Instead, the cityscape stretched out like a glowing tapestry, reminding her of the night skies back home. She lifted her gaze. Though she knew the stars would remain hidden, their brilliance washed away by the city's endless glow, leaving only a vast, empty sky in their place. Shinobi gazed at the vast night sky, momentarily losing himself in the serenity that was so rare in Metropolis. The peaceful moment, however, was short-lived as a streak of light, resembling a shooting star, cut across the darkness. For a fleeting second, he considered making a wish, but the realization quickly set in that this light was not simply passing through the atmosphere, it was descending rapidly. More concerningly, it was heading straight for him. With precise reflexes, Shinobi sidestepped the incoming object just in time, feeling a wave of heat as it rushed past him. The fiery mass streaked toward Suicide Slum, crashing through a building before vanishing from sight. Any hopes of a quiet evening were instantly dashed. Without hesitation, Shinobi activated the communicator in his ear. "Call Robin, designation B01. As the call connected, he moved swiftly toward the crash site. Ignoring the event wasn't an option, there could be civilians in danger. Upon reaching the building, he scaled its side with practiced agility, arriving at the gaping hole left in its wake just as Robin answered. "This is Robin." "Something came up," Shinobi informed him. "I won't be able to meet up with you and the others. I'll catch up tomorrow at the mountain." "Wait, wah." Before Robin could protest, Shinobi ended the call. He would understand soon enough. Right now, there were more pressing matters at hand. Moving through the building, he followed the trail of destruction. Miraculously, it seemed that no one had been harmed. Exiting through the second breach in the structure, he surveyed the scene outside. The object had carved a deep trench through a small neighborhood park, its path ending at a car that had taken the full brunt of the impact. Wasting no time, he followed the trench to the wrecked vehicle. What he found inside, however, was far from what he had anticipated. Amidst the crumpled metal was an exceptionally striking woman. She had long auburn hair that framed her face, a warm golden complexion, and was clad in a purple ensemble that, while somewhat impractical, hinted at a warrior's presence. Even in her unconscious state, it was evident she was tall, possibly standing just a bit taller than Shinobi himself. Her attire included a high-necked shoulder guard, thigh-high boots, and a form-fitting bodysuit, which seemed more ornamental than protective. His keen gaze landed on the metal restraints encasing her wrists, heavy-duty restraints that extended past her hands. Given the advanced craftsmanship, it was likely these were designed to contain significant superhuman abilities, possibly strength or energy-based powers. He had encountered stranger phenomena in his time here, this was well within the realm of possibility. Ensuring the surrounding area was clear of injured civilians, Shinobi knelt beside the mysterious woman. The streets of Suicide Slum were no place for anyone, let alone someone in her vulnerable state, especially at this hour. Without further hesitation, he carefully lifted her from the wreckage. Casting one last glance around the eerily quiet street, he made his decision. In a swift motion, the two figures vanished into the night, carried away by a gust of wind and swirling leaves. Coriander awoke in an unfamiliar place, though the sensation was not entirely new to her. Throughout her life, she had often found herself in difficult situations, particularly due to her sister, Commander, who had repeatedly caused her distress. However, something about this moment felt different. For one, she was lying on a bed, and her hands were unbound. That was unusual. The Pshins, who had once captured her and her sister, were always meticulous in restraining their captives. Commander, too, never allowed her any freedom. If she wasn't in the hands of the Pshins or the Citadel, then where exactly was she? Given her surroundings, this didn't resemble a slaver ship, which meant her escape had likely been successful. As she took in her surroundings, she noticed scattered clothing on the floor and the remnants of her broken metal restraints. The edges of the bindings looked as though they had been forcefully removed, their rough surface suggesting some kind of immense strength or power had freed her. The remains lay near the feet of a young woman dressed in a black and orange bodysuit. The girl was seated in a chair, casually twirling a black knife between her fingers. Upon noticing Coriander's stir, she immediately perked up, her bright blue eyes shining with relief. Her blonde hair caught the light as she smiled warmly. She spoke excitedly, but Coriander couldn't understand the words. Coriander rose from the bed and stepped toward the figure, who immediately stood as well. She gently placed a hand on the person's face, sensing the tension in their posture, as if bracing for conflict. Instead of engaging, she leaned in and pressed a soft kiss against them. Their eyes widened in surprise, and the moment she pulled away, they instinctively shifted into a defensive stance. "What was that about?" they asked, clearly startled. "Not that I'm complaining, but why did you kiss me? And who are you, anyway?" She smiled at their bluntness before beginning to explain. Naruko sat in her kitchen, quietly sipping a cup of instant noodles while Coriander busied herself emptying the refrigerator. The alien woman ate with remarkable enthusiasm, and Naruko couldn't help but glance at her. Blushing, she quickly turned her attention back to her food. The memory of the unexpected kiss lingered in her mind. Coriander had explained that it was a method of language assimilation common to her species, but even with that explanation, Naruko could still feel the faint tingle from it. As they ate, Coriander recounted the events that had led her to Earth. She had once been a princess of Tamaran, but to maintain peace, her family had given her to a rival faction. She spent 6 years in captivity before she and her sister were captured by yet another force, the Pshins, who conducted cruel experiments on them. During a chaotic battle between the warring factions, she seized the opportunity to escape, flying through space until she lost consciousness and eventually crash-landed here. It was a lot to take in, and while the story made sense, Naruko couldn't help but notice that Coriander's primary focus at the moment seemed to be consuming as much food as possible. "Don't you want to go back to your home planet?" Naruko asked. "Aren't there people waiting for you there?" Coriander paused, standing in front of the open fridge, and leaned her head against the cool metal. A somber silence filled the room. "When my sister betrayed our people and sided with the Citadel, she revealed all of Tamaran's defenses. Soon after I was given away, she led their invasion. My home. My people. They're gone. There's nothing left for me there." Naruko fell silent, unsure of what to say. From what she had been told, she could never return to her own world, but at least she had left it in peace. The battles had ended before she was pulled into this reality, and she could take comfort in knowing her friends were safe. Coriander had no such reassurance. Her family was lost, her planet occupied by those responsible, and she had no place to return to. "I'm sorry," Naruko said softly. "I can't even imagine how that must feel." Coriander straightened up, quickly gathering more food in her arms before stepping out of the kitchen. "Don't trouble yourself over it," she called back from the living room. "It happened a long time ago." Naruko followed and found her sitting comfortably on the couch, arranging the assortment of food she had collected on the coffee table. She watched for a moment as Coriander decided what to eat first before speaking again. "So? No one's coming after you? The Citadel? Your sister? If there's a chance they could track you here, I need to let the League know." Coriander hesitated before answering. "My sister? She would love nothing more than to see me gone for good. But when I escaped, they were in the middle of a battle. I doubt anyone saw me leave, let alone followed me." Naruko could sense the weight behind her words. She had never known what it was like to have a true family, but she did understand the pain of being pursued by someone once considered dear. She had once faced a friend who had lost himself to anger and vengeance, someone who no longer saw reason. Confronting someone you cared about in battle, knowing you had no choice but to fight, it was a pain Naruko understood all too well. Gently, she placed a comforting hand on Coriander's shoulder. The Tamarindian looked at her and smiled softly in gratitude before returning to her meal. "Well," Naruko said, leaning back, "I should probably reach out to someone from the League. I'd let you stay here away from their questions, but no matter what your next step is, you're going to need their help." Coriander tilted her head. "What is the League?" Naruko scratched the back of her head thoughtfully before responding. "The Justice League. You could say they're the guardians of this world. They dedicate themselves to protecting innocent people everywhere, standing up for those who can't defend themselves and ensuring that no one misuses their power to intimidate others." Coriander took a small bite of her celery stick, contemplating for a moment before finishing it entirely. It seemed she had made up her mind. "Then I will stay here. My people are gone, my home world is in ruins, but I have the strength to help those in need, just like you said. Besides, I already have one friend here." She beamed warmly at Naruko, who returned the smile. If this was Coriander's choice, then Naruko would stand by her. After all, that's what friends were for. A heroic stand. The shinobi rose from the couch and took a few steps forward. Raising a hand to her communicator, she began, "Call Martian Manhunter, designation." Before she could finish, a sudden commotion erupted. The sound of panicked voices mixed with the sharp blasts of energy weapons. Moments later, an amplified voice rang out over the chaos, issuing demands in an unfamiliar language, one that was clearly not spoken on Earth. "They are asking for my whereabouts. It seems I was followed here," Coriander said, rising to her feet. Her eyes glowed an even brighter shade of green, a clear sign that she was ready for battle. Naruko adjusted her face mask and rolled her shoulders in preparation for what was to come. "Well, Cori, ready to save the city for the first time?" she asked with a confident grin. Coriander nodded, and with that, they sprang into action. A strategic approach. Naruko and Coriander positioned themselves on the rooftop of the shinobi's apartment building. While Naruko stood firmly on the edge, Coriander hovered beside her, effortlessly floating in place. Though the building wasn't particularly tall, only 5 stories, it provided a clear vantage point over the unfolding situation. From their position, Naruko counted 15 reptilian humanoids surrounding a landed spacecraft in the middle of an intersection. Their green-scaled bodies were clad in dark armor, and each one had a pair of black wings folded neatly against their backs. It wasn't hard to deduce that they had aerial capabilities. If they were allowed to spread out, it would make things much harder for Naruko and Coriander. Turning to her companion, Naruko asked, "So, what are your abilities? I figure I could handle the lizard guys while you deal with the ship, or vice versa. What do you think?" "I will take care of the star glider," Coriander replied with determination. "The Pshins left me with a new power when they experimented on my sister and me. It's time to put it to use." Without another word, she ascended higher into the night sky, positioning herself directly above the unsuspecting Gordanians. The first strike. With their roles decided, Naruko reached into a pouch on her belt, drawing 15 shuriken. Her first priority was disabling the enemy's weapons. Stacking the shuriken in a neat pile on her left hand, she closed her eyes and took a steadying breath. A faint orange aura surrounded her as she activated her heightened senses. When she opened her eyes again, her irises had turned a striking amber, with horizontal pupils reminiscent of a toad's. Focusing her chakra, she spread her awareness, detecting every living presence in the area. The Gordanians radiated a cold, intense energy, making them easy to track. Coriander, on the other hand, burned like a radiant star, her determination shining through. A quick scan confirmed that 3 more of the reptilian warriors remained inside the ship, but by the time they realized what was happening, it would be too late. Naruko met Coriander's gaze and gave a firm nod. It was time to begin. As soon as the signal was given, Naruko turned her focus back to her targets and swiftly launched her shuriken. With precise movements, she swept her right hand over the stack of shuriken, sending each one flying with expert accuracy. Infused with wind-natured chakra, the spinning projectiles cut through the air and struck their marks, the energy weapons of the Gordanians. The alien invaders hesitated, fear and uncertainty flashing across their faces as they began to retreat toward their ship. However, before they could escape, Coriander unleashed a powerful assault from above. Naruko had sensed the buildup of energy but hadn't anticipated the sheer force that followed. From Coriander's hands erupted a barrage of bright green energy blasts, striking the ship with unrelenting force. The wings were the first to be destroyed, followed by the engines, before she directed her attacks at the ship's main body, ensuring it wouldn't be taking off anytime soon. With the Gordanians scattered and their weapons rendered useless, Naruko saw an opportunity to take action. She leapt from the rooftop and landed gracefully on the ground, letting out a sharp whistle. The remaining aliens turned at the sound, gripping old-fashioned flails from their belts as they prepared to fight. Realizing that retreat was no longer an option, they charged forward with determined battle cries, rallying their allies. Soon, Naruko found herself facing the bulk of their forces. She knew she was outnumbered, but numbers weren't always an advantage. There were plenty of ways to handle a large crowd. The shinobi swiftly formed a series of hand seals, taking a deep breath before releasing a powerful gust of wind. The force of the technique surged through the intersection, sending the Gordanians tumbling backward. Parked cars shifted from their spots, and the alien invaders were thrown against their ship, nearby vehicles, and even each other. As the wind settled, the defeated foes lay scattered across the ground, either groaning in pain or completely unconscious. With a quiet murmur, the shinobi spoke, "Wind style, great breakthrough." Scanning the aftermath of the battle, the shinobi assessed the situation. Despite being alien warriors, these Gordanians were ultimately foot soldiers, no match for the level of skill displayed. Just then, Coriander landed beside the shinobi, a confident smile on her face as she observed the fallen adversaries. As a warrior of Tamaran, she appreciated a well-fought battle. "That was an impressive display," she remarked. "Very effective. But there are still 3 left inside their ship, most likely their leader." Realizing the odds were no longer in their favor, the remaining Gordanians had chosen to stay inside their ship, relying on its reinforced hull for protection. From Coriander's brief observation of the shinobi's abilities, she could tell this was a true warrior, someone capable of subduing an entire squad without causing unnecessary harm. Such skill was rare. They approached the ship, and the shinobi knocked against its exterior, testing its durability. "Seemed sturdy," they admitted before glancing at Coriander. "Any chance you're strong enough to handle this?" Coriander smirked. "I think I can manage." With determination, she pressed her hands against the hull, pushing through the metal with some effort before tearing open a sizable entrance. Before she could step inside, the shinobi swiftly pulled her back as blasts of energy fire filled the space where she had stood just moments ago. With a sigh, the shinobi formed another series of hand seals, channeling energy into their hands. Sparks crackled around their fingertips as they turned to Coriander. "I'm going to send an electric current through the entire ship. It'll stun them for a while, just long enough for you to get inside and bring them out." She gave a firm nod, ready for action. The shinobi pressed their hands against the ship's exterior, and immediately, sparks erupted. Small bursts of energy crackled through the hull, followed by muffled shouts from inside. A moment later, silence fell. Without hesitation, Coriander dashed inside, emerging moments later with 3 Gordanians in tow. One of them wore golden armor, a clear sign of leadership. The shinobi wasted no time, swiftly incapacitating them with precise strikes to the backs of their necks. With the mission nearly complete, the shinobi prepared to make the call that had been interrupted earlier. "Call Martian Manhunter, designation 07. Dear YouTube family. That's a wrap for now. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more exciting content. See you in the next one. Best. Anime Dreams.